The blue and red lights painted the quiet suburban street like a crime scene. You could hear the radios crackle, the murmurs of neighbors peeking through their blinds, and somewhere between it all, the sound of a young woman crying. She stood on the edge of the driveway, clutching her phone, trembling as two officers questioned her. She'd just come home from college for the weekend. It was supposed to be a peaceful visit, dinner with her dad, maybe a movie night. Instead, she was surrounded by squad cars. Across the street, leaning smugly against her pristine SUV, stood the HOA president, Patricia. Arms folded, chin lifted, acting like she'd just caught some dangerous fugitive. "She doesn't belong here," Patricia said sharply, pointing toward the girl. "She's trespassing. I've told you, this property's off limits." "Check the records." The officer frowned, unsure. "Ma'am, she says this is her father's home," Patricia scoffed. "Her father, please." "This isn't a college dorm. We have rules here." A minute later, a black sedan rolled up. Out stepped a tall man in a gray coat, calm but serious. Her father. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He just walked past the flashing lights and looked at his daughter, then at Patricia. "What's going on here?" he asked quietly. Patricia folded her arms tighter. "This young woman is trespassing. We're handling it." He gave a small sigh, almost like he was disappointed. Not angry, just tired. "Really?" he said softly. "Because last I checked..." "You're standing on my property," the officer blinked, confused. "Sir, and you are..." He reached into his coat pocket and showed his ID, the kind that doesn't need explanation. The kind that makes silence fall instantly. "I'm Judge Thompson," he said evenly. "And that's my daughter." The smug smile drained from Patricia's face. The officers exchanged looks. The neighbors who'd been recording quietly lowered their phones, and with that calm voice cutting through the chaos, he said the words that turned the whole night around. She thought she was catching a criminal, but she was about to learn she just picked a fight with the judge. But let me start at the beginning. Before we dive in, let me know where you're listening from today. The flashing red and blue lights painted the entire cul-de-sac like a bad dream. You could hear the low hum of police radios, the crunch of boots on gravel, and the distant sound of a dog barking somewhere down the street. But the center of it all, the thing that froze everyone's attention, was the sight of a young woman standing in the driveway, tears welling in her eyes, surrounded by officers. Her name was Emily Thompson. She was 22, a college student who had come home that weekend to visit her dad. She'd been gone for months. Classes, work, life, and tonight was supposed to be simple. Dinner, catching up, maybe some of her dad's famous lasagna. Instead, she was being accused of breaking into her own home. One of the officers, clearly unsure what to make of the situation, kept glancing back at the house and then at the clipboard in his hand. "Ma'am, you're saying this is your father's home?" he asked, trying to sound patient. "Yes," Emily said, her voice shaky. "I've lived here since I was a kid. My room's inside, my pictures are on the wall, you can literally see my name on the mailbox." Before the officer could respond, a sharp, cutting voice came from behind them. "That's quite enough," said Patricia, the HOA president. She stepped forward like she was walking onto a stage. Every move was deliberate, calculated. She had that practiced confidence of someone who'd spent years being obeyed simply because she spoke with authority. Mid-50s, perfectly styled hair, pearl earrings, and that tone. The one that made even grown men feel like they were being scolded. "This young woman," Patricia continued, "was seen entering the property after hours. We've had incidents before, theft, vandalism. I'm not about to let that happen again." The officers hesitated. She wasn't law enforcement, but she sounded like she was. And the way she said it, calm, crisp, authoritative, it was easy to assume she knew what she was talking about. Emily took a step forward. "You know who I am?" "You've seen me 100 times, Patricia." Patricia's lips curved into a polite, icy smile. "I see a lot of people in this neighborhood, dear. That doesn't mean they belong here." The words stung more than Emily expected. It wasn't just the accusation. It was the way Patricia said it. Like she wasn't talking to a person, but to a problem. And that was Patricia's specialty: control. Patricia had been the HOA president for almost a decade. And in her mind, that made her the guardian of order. She kept spreadsheets of who parked where, who trimmed their bushes, who left their trash cans out too long. She'd once fined a family for leaving a Halloween decoration up a day past the seasonal decor removal policy. She called it community maintenance. Everyone else called it what it was: control. And she was proud of it. She saw the HOA as her kingdom and herself as its ruler. Every rule, every fine, every little policy, all carefully crafted to make sure she remained the person everyone had to go through. Emily tried again. "Look, my dad's inside." "Just let me—" "No," Patricia interrupted sharply. "You're not entering that home until we verify your story. Officer, I'd like her detained until we can confirm ownership." The younger of the two officers blinked. "Detained?" Patricia gave him a pointed look. For her safety, of course. Emily just stared, speechless. Her hands trembled. For the first time, she realized this woman actually believed she had that kind of power. Then, before anyone could say another word, the sound of a car pulling into the cul-de-sac cut through the tension. A black sedan rolled up slowly, headlights slicing through the chaos. The door opened, and out stepped a tall man in a long gray coat. Calm, steady, and composed. "Dad," Emily called out, running toward him. Patricia frowned. "Sir, this area is currently part of an HOA safety matter. Please stay back until—" But the man didn't even look at her. He walked past the flashing lights, past the officers, and stopped right in front of his daughter. He looked at her face, brushed a tear from her cheek, and said quietly, "You okay, kiddo?" She nodded, still shaken. Then he turned to the officers. "Someone want to tell me why there are police cars in my driveway?" The older officer cleared his throat. "Sir, there was a report of a trespasser. This woman claims she lives here." He raised an eyebrow. "This woman is my daughter." Patricia folded her arms, refusing to back down. "We'll need proof of that. For the record," he sighed softly, almost as if he pitied her. "You want proof?" He reached into his coat and handed over his ID, the kind of ID that makes everyone stand a little straighter. The kind that doesn't require further explanation. The officer's eyes widened. "Judge Thompson?" "That's right," he said calmly. "And I'd like to know why my daughter is being treated like a criminal for entering her own home." The silence that followed was the kind that doesn't need volume to be loud. Patricia's face drained of color. You could practically hear the sound of her composure cracking. I wasn't aware," she started, stammering slightly. "That's the problem," Judge Thompson said evenly. "You weren't aware." "You assumed?" The officer nodded slowly. "Sir, we'll sort this out right away." Patricia tried to recover. "It's just a misunderstanding. We have strict rules about unregistered visitors and—" "Visitors," the judge interrupted, his voice still calm but cutting through hers. "My daughter's name is on the deed. She's not a visitor. She's family. And the last I checked, neither you nor the HOA have any legal authority to police private property." One of the officers coughed awkwardly, clearly wishing he could vanish. "Ma'am, maybe we should step aside." Patricia opened her mouth again but stopped when she noticed the neighbors gathering. Curtains parted. Phones recording. Whispers spreading like wildfire. And for once, the queen of the HOA found herself without an audience willing to obey. The officers apologized to Emily, their voices low, embarrassed. Patricia stood frozen, arms crossed, trying to maintain what little dignity she had left. Judge Thompson, however, didn't gloat. He didn't yell. He just looked at her with that same steady calm that probably silenced entire courtrooms. "I'd recommend," he said softly, "that you review your association's charter. You might find your authority ends where my property line begins." Then he turned to the officers. "Gentlemen, thank you for responding. You can close the report as a false alarm." As they left, Patricia tried one last time to salvage her pride. "I was just doing my duty, protecting the neighborhood." He paused, half turning toward her. "I understand that," he said. "But maybe next time you start by knocking, not by calling the cops on a young woman walking into her own home." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't reply. There wasn't anything left to say. The neighborhood stayed quiet long after the police left. A few porch lights clicked off. Somewhere a phone dinged, a text thread blowing up with gossip. Inside, Emily sat at the kitchen counter, finally starting to breathe normally again. Her dad poured her some tea, the calm returning bit by bit. "Guess I missed a lot while I was away," she said, forcing a small laugh. He smiled faintly. "You could say that. Power gets to some people's heads faster than wine." She looked out the window, where the red and blue reflections still faintly glowed against the damp pavement. "Do you think she'll stop now?" He took a sip of his tea before answering. "People like that don't stop because they're wrong. They stop because the truth leaves them no choice. Emily nodded slowly. Guess you picked the wrong family to mess with. He chuckled, just once. Yeah, he said. She did. And outside, as the night finally went quiet, Patricia's house sat dark and still. No clipboard, no notes, no power left to throw around. For the first time in a long time, the street finally felt peaceful again. The morning after the police lights faded, the neighborhood didn't feel the same. For years, the cul-de-sac had operated under an unspoken rule. Don't cross Patricia. She ran the HOA like a tiny kingdom, all smiles at the block party, all threats in the email afterward. People had learned to stay quiet. They paid the fines, trimmed their bushes, and nodded politely at her passive-aggressive reminders. But now the queen had stumbled, and in neighborhoods like this one, gossip spreads faster than wildfire. It started before sunrise. Someone posted a blurry photo of Patricia standing beside the squad car the night before, arms crossed, face pale, while Judge Thompson talked to the officers. Within an hour, it was in every group chat. By 8 a.m., the local Facebook page had turned into a full-on courtroom. Did anyone else see the police last night? Apparently, Patricia called them on the judge's daughter. Unbelievable. Wait, the judge? Oh, Karma's having a good morning. By noon, the comment section had split in two, half the neighborhood laughing in disbelief, and the other half nervously deleting old posts where they'd agreed with her about community discipline. For the first time in years, people felt bold enough to speak freely, and for Patricia, that was a problem. Inside her home, she sat at her kitchen table, coffee gone cold, reading an email from the HOA vice president. Per Section 6 of the Community Leadership Policy, a vote of confidence may be initiated at the next board meeting. She stared at it for a long time. She'd written that very clause herself, years ago, as a safeguard against disruptive leadership. The irony wasn't lost on her. She pushed the laptop away and muttered, "Ungrateful cowards." Her husband, Mark, peeked over his newspaper. "You did call the cops on the judge's kid, Pat." She glared at him. "I was enforcing the rules. It's not my fault she didn't register her presence." Mark just sighed. "You know what your problem is? What? You think this neighborhood is a courtroom, but you're not the judge." She didn't respond, but the words stuck with her. By the time the HOA meeting rolled around that weekend, the community center was packed. Normally, these gatherings were quiet affairs, a handful of bored, homeowners half listening while Patricia scolded them about mulch colors or mailbox heights. But this night was different. Everyone showed up. People who hadn't attended a meeting in years filled the room, some out of curiosity, some out of frustration, and a few just to see if the rumors were true. Patricia walked in with her usual folder of notes and that same rehearsed smile. But she could feel the shift in the air. No one greeted her. No one offered coffee. The whispers were louder than the chatter. She took her seat at the front table, smoothed her papers, and cleared her throat. "Good evening, everyone," she began. "Let's get started. I'm aware there's been some confusion about recent events." "Confusion?" someone in the back muttered. "You called the cops on a resident's daughter." A ripple of laughter followed. Patricia's jaw tightened. "I was acting on a report," she said quickly. "We've had incidents before, and I take neighborhood safety very seriously." Then, from the front row, a woman stood up. Linda Perez. She'd been one of Patricia's most loyal supporters for years. But tonight, her tone was different. "Patricia," Linda said, "you've gone too far. You embarrassed the neighborhood. The police were here because you couldn't recognize your own neighbor's family." "I did what was necessary," Patricia replied, trying to sound composed. "No," Linda said softly. "You did what made you feel powerful." The room went silent. Then another voice spoke, someone this time from the side of the room. It was Brian, a soft-spoken guy who usually avoided confrontation. "My wife was fined for having her recycling bin out for an extra hour last month. You said it was disruptive to the visual standard, but you..." He gestured around. "You disrupted the entire street." Applause broke out. Patricia blinked. "Let's keep things civil, please," but the tide had turned. One by one, residents began speaking up. Each story, another crack in her armor. "You fined my kid for drawing chalk. Art. You told me to repaint my door. Because the shade was too happy. You threatened to tow my car during my mother's funeral." She tried to speak. To regain control, but every time she did, another voice rose louder. Finally, the vice president, a nervous man named Harold, stood up. Per request by 10 or more members, we'll hold a vote of confidence. Effective immediately. Patricia stared at him, stunned. You can't be serious. Harold avoided her gaze. It's in the bylaws, Patricia. Your bylaws. The vote took 10 minutes. When it was over, the results were taped to the wall for everyone to see. Out of 52 residents, 47 voted no confidence. Patricia's hand trembled slightly as she read the number. She didn't make a scene. She didn't cry. She just gathered her notes, placed them neatly into her folder, and walked out, her heels clicking against the tile like a fading drum beat. No one followed her. A week later, the official letter arrived, effective immediately. Patricia Hensley is hereby removed from her position as HOA president. Her privileges, including access to HOA accounts, meetings, and correspondence, are revoked. The same day, a new email followed, this one from the county attorney's office. It turned out Judge Thompson had quietly filed an official complaint for harassment and misuse of emergency services. The police department, embarrassed by the incident, cooperated fully. Within a month, Patricia was facing misdemeanor charges and community service hours. Her fine was small, but the humiliation wasn't. The first time she showed up for her assigned work, the irony hit her full force. Orange vest, plastic gloves, a trash bag in one hand. And where was she assigned? The local park and the one she used to patrol, clipboard in hand, scolding teenagers for leaving soda cans on the grass. Now she was the one picking them up. Some of her old neighbors drove by, recognizing her instantly. A few honked. Some waved. One or two even slowed down just long enough to say, "Looks good, Patricia." She forced a polite smile, but inside it burned. Back in the neighborhood, things started to shift. Without Patricia's iron grip, the HOA actually became human. The new president, Linda, of all people, focused on community projects instead of punishments. She organized a neighborhood barbecue, the first one in years without tension. Children played freely. People left their cars out overnight without fear. The tone had changed. Even the judge and his daughter attended. Emily laughed with neighbors she hadn't spoken to in years. And Judge Thompson, for all his quiet authority, spent most of the evening flipping burgers like any other dad on a Saturday night. No titles, no fines, just people. One evening, a few months later, Patricia walked through the same park after finishing her last day of community service. It was quiet, peaceful even. The sunset stretched across the sky, painting everything gold. For the first time, she noticed how still it all felt when she wasn't trying to control it. She sat on a bench, looking out at the grass she'd once lectured people for walking on. A couple of neighborhood kids ran by, laughing, their shoes leaving small prints in the dirt. For once, she didn't say a word, she just watched. Back on the cul-de-sac, a small sign had gone up near the HOA notice board. It read, "Community Service Schedule Volunteer Cleanup, Saturdays. 9 a.m. and there, printed neatly in black ink, was the name at the top of the list, Patricia Hensley. Coordinator sometimes. Justice doesn't come with dramatic endings or courtroom speeches. Sometimes it arrives quietly, like a gentle correction, not a punishment. For years, Patricia ruled with fear. She thought authority meant control, but now the only thing left under her command was the community service schedule. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what she needed.